The golf. Good morning on this Monday, Jack, Heath, J-Dog on the boards. We're in our capital city studios, and it is absolutely beautiful and delightful out there. Very comfortable after last week. We did have some pretty strong storms blow through, rain through the area yesterday afternoon. Some reported power outages as well. Like Hill, New Hampshire, tree fell in a house, according to reports. But we're looking at a very comfortable start to the week, J-Dog. Hope you had a good weekend, and not a bad weekend overall. But as I said yesterday, some downpours. But today we were looking at a beautiful start to the week, Dog. There he is. Where is he? I'm trying to bring in J-Dog here.
Howdy.
Hi. You have a good weekend?
Yeah, I think this weekend might be better, so we'll see.
Yeah, all right. Well, it was nice. We got a very comfortable start to the week. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Couple of stories we are tracking. We are going to be talking about the economy a little bit. Doug Tangden, are the trade battles between countries, the tariff stuff, hurting the economy as much as people thought? Not, I guess, apparently not much, not as much. Markets are up, the markets are already trending up today. We'll come back to that. Also, our poll question up on X this morning at the Pulse of an H. I don't know. Everyone seems to be talking, as J-Dog and I said before the show this morning, about one story. The HR executive and this former CEO to that startup company caught on the big video screen at Coldplay, hugging, I guess, during the song until they broke apart, and now all you know what's hitting the fan. Our poll question up on X, do you think this whole Coldplay video of this couple that were not married to each other, both separately married, do you think it's a big deal or not? J-Dog, I have to be honest with you. It is caught on like wildfire since last week when this happened, of course. And there is a New Hampshire connection, J-Dog. I don't know if you knew this. The woman in question in the so-called famous video cam, Kristen Cabot, apparently she's on leave from her job at Astronomer. It was a AI startup, I guess, after the so-called Jumbotron incident. She and her husband, I don't know what the status is, and frankly, I really don't care. I don't care. Own a home on the seacoast. I think it's Rye, New Hampshire. But the husbands, well, I don't know, J-Dog. Our question is, do you think it's a big deal? I really, under the category of why does it matter? I mean, we're not talking about, I guess, I don't know, their HR standards. Obviously, she was the HR executive officer in her company, the CEO. I'm sure they have some rules about some things in terms of relationships within the company or the charters or bylaws and all that. I don't know, but under the category of why is this such a big deal, I have no idea. So we're asking you on our poll question up on X at the Pulse. Do you think the so-called Jumbotron Coldplay moment is a big news story or not? J-Dog, what do you make of this? I mean, you and I were talking about it. It's like it's become the story.
Did this happen at Gillette Stadium, by the way?
I believe it did.
Okay, there you go. If there was no Jumbotron at Gillette Stadium, we would not have had to have this happen, because not a lot of stadiums have great Jumbotrons. Some of them are kind of So if this had happened at like a ballpark where the Jumbotron is kind of wonky, none of this would ever happen. So that's what. So there you go.
Yeah. They obviously are not married. So it was a rather cozy hug, I guess, but under the category again of who cares, sometimes the stories that take off, or I don't know, you never know.
This is the kiss cam on steroids.
What is it? What's that, Doug?
This is the kiss cam on steroids.
Yeah, I guess so. But the other story I just have to touch upon, and that is the Stephen Colbert, the night show from CBS, the late night host, being canceled. I don't know why this has lingered on so much. I really don't. Now they're making it about, was he politically canned because he has a liberal bent? Is Donald Trump, because of the lawsuit earlier that, against CBS, are they in the 60 Minutes interview, is CBS and the Paramount, is it Paramount that owns CBS? Are they caving to, or is this political? I got to be honest with you. I think it's very simple. Shows like this get canceled or put on the air for one reason and one reason only. Let me tell you what it is. It's called money. If Colbert's show was profitable, he would be on the air. They wouldn't have canceled him. Let me repeat that. If Stephen Colbert's show was making money for the network, the shareholders, the parent company and all that, he would not have been canceled if his show was profitable. If his show wasn't profitable, it's about money and ratings. I have news for you. It's not public broadcasting here. This is commercial broadcasting. So Jimmy Fallon, all these, they're all shocked, and Seth Meyers from Bedford, New Hampshire, originally, they're all shocked. I put on. There's two stories in this week I put under the category of who cares. Who cares? Stephen Colbert show being canceled and the whole Coldplay concert story under the category of who cares. All right, coming up this morning, we're going to look at New Hampshire's evolving political calendar and some of these races now that we're seeing more people run. And one of the stories we're tracking, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as we get going. And also Anna Brown, Citizens Count. We'll talk about some of the stuff we're not paying attention to at the state. Or, we have the budget passed and lawmakers were into the throes of summer, but there's always something going on. A little bit later on, as I said, we will try and unravel this economy. People don't remember, but it wasn't many weeks ago. In fact, it was only a few months ago, where if you watched MSNBC and you listen to Jamie Dimon, one of the biggest, one of our big bankers out there, they were predicting doom and gloom because of Trump's trade wars. Doom and gloom. We were going to fall off the cliff with the economy. And I'm not saying that there's not that things won't, cool off by the end of this year. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but the whole trade stuff hasn't seemed to have put the economy as much of a tailspin as people thought. We all thought with the trade wars, it started with Canada, Mexico, and then across the board, the European Union, Japan, Brazil, all this stuff was going to cause, holy wreak havoc with the economy. And it just hasn't really materialized. So we're going to check in with Doug Tengden, one of our economic contributors and thinkers, and of course, great partner and sponsor, World Market Advisors. And again, housing locally continues to be almost every weekend. I bump into someone who has a story about they still can't believe how expensive homes are here. I talked to one young realtor yesterday afternoon. She works full time out of Portsmouth. They serve like a 45 minute radius around Portsmouth. That would be, everything, down to Hampton or up to beyond Madbury, up to, Rochester, Dover, Portsmouth, Rye, all the seacoast area. And she said that under $1 million, things are moving quickly. Over $1 million, things are starting to sit, and they're starting to see some price reductions. But it was interesting when I asked her when you do get a buyer, and she works as pretty darn good, pretty full time, who are the buyers? Where are they from? She said almost entirely from out of state, North Carolina, New York, New Jersey, other states. They're still moving here, getting out of those states. And I think a lot of it is that has to do with safety, all kinds of safety for your kids, safety in the community, safe place to live, safe from Mother Nature, all these things. I mean, you just look at, I don't know if you saw any of the, I have to laugh when I hear Mayor Karen Bass talk about all the stuff from ICE and immigration pickups and all that stuff. The National Guard, I think, has left the whole LA. They called it, she insists they were all peaceful riots. Have you seen any of the video in California coming out of last week and weekend? There was this guy, I don't know, Long Beach, California, just Friday or one of the nights last week, just, late at night, just doing all kinds of like donuts, spinning around, almost hitting crowds. And then a big, huge crowd of, I call them thugs and criminals, just started breaking into stores, just started going into stores while this car is spinning around. Another part of California that were just, I guess the cool thing to do out there sometimes when you have nothing else to do, instead of like clean your house, clean your property, go down to a soup kitchen and volunteer. The cool thing to do out there is just light cars on fire on the interstate, just light vehicles on fire. I saw some other video of California. The first story I referenced was Long Beach. The other story, I don't know. Just 3 or 4 cars burning on the highway. Just people are on the roads, sort of a bypass through the city of LA. It's I guess, cool to go out and light cars on fire. What the heck? Nothing else to do. What did you do growing up? Oh, I just went out. I just lit some cars on fire on the roadways. Hey, hopefully no one in them. Hey, Alexa, Google Play the Pulse of an Age. Talk about some of the primary races taking shape here a little bit later on. Anna Brown, Citizens Count, and Neil Levesque, Mike Dennehy. We got a packed show for you. Buckle up. And Seacoast in New Hampshire, 1270 AM, 98.1 FM, and of course 98.7 FM HD2, an additional signal FM on the Seacoast right up into Maine. Good morning, Southern Maine. Good morning, Lakes region. We have you blanketed, 107.3 FM, one of our great stations up there, of course. 107.7 FM. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google, play the Pulse of NH. We are back in a moment.
The Pulse of New Hampshire is hitting the New Hampshire.
Harvard University in court today with the, I guess, justice or Trump administration lawyers on the question of trying to Harvard's case claw back $3 billion in federal funds taken because of the university's, according to the administration and justice, lack of providing a safer environment for anti-Semitism on the Cambridge Ivy League campus. We'll keep an eye on that. Neil Levesque, Institute of Politics, St. Anselm College, one of our regular contributors on a very comfortable Monday out of the gate. Good morning, Neil. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Just watching a lot of this turmoil regarding Epstein and the file, and the president having some pushback from his own base.
Yeah, well, it's going into another week, and I don't know where the story goes. I can't figure this story is different than some of the other ones for different reasons. I think. Well, tell me what you think from a political, media. How long the shelf life story? How am I? You could just release everything all at once. But what do you think on this story? More there. When there's smoke, there's fire, or not?
I think that the interesting part of the story is the fact that Donald Trump can't seem to sort of just dismiss this with his own supporters, that he's getting pushback from them. Usually, we've seen time and time again that what he says, they follow right in line. It's very tribal. And with this case, it's a situation. It's almost like the Hunt for Red October when the Russian sub sends the torpedo out, and then the torpedo comes back and hits the same Russian sub. They create a lot of talk about conspiracies, that there's more to this, that the government needed to fess up to who was on the list, and then they get control of the government, and then they say, well, there's nothing on the list. And a lot of those same people that believed that there was more here are not easily letting go. And it's a political issue for the president, because it seems like he's just sort of saying that it's a scam and nothing to see here, but it's not going away. And that's why I think it's interesting from the perspective of the fact that he has this core group of people who, no matter what, have always been with him and will always be with him. But in this case, it seems like they're going a different way.
I think there's another thing at work here, and that is that one thing that this administration and president's been doing has been very transparent. And I think of the Kennedy assassination files, not far into the first 100 days, we're going to release all the Kennedy stuff online all at once, just put it out there once and for all, something he was going to do in the first administration, but held off. So I think there was this feeling. And then on this one here, it almost seems to be like a couple of self-imposed fumbles, because number one, Pam Bondi came in early on in the administration and said that all the files were left on her desk as the new attorney general. They were just all there. And the inference was on the Epstein case, they were just going to all be released. And lately, drips and drabs, or would it just be testimony before the federal grand jury that would be released? Would the whole thing be released? So it's gotten kind of tripped up a little bit. And then the other thing is President Trump's attempt recently, which was interesting last week, I think he thought this would deflect it. Hey, the Biden administration had this stuff for 4 years. They were sitting on it. The Biden administration, if it was anything that bad as it pertains to him, Donald Trump, don't you think they would have released it? So it just seems that I think the only way they're going to get ahead of this is just to release everything all at once, but I may be wrong.
They can't do that. So what they've done is they've asked the court to release the grand jury files on it, but the court is likely to say no. And then they can say, geez, we asked, and they said no. So it's a bad court again. And it's just another way to deflect the blame. But
hey, tell me, here's another story. Can you tell me why this Coldplay Jumbotron inappropriate hug by the couple is such a big story?
I just think it's just the gossip of the summer. Apparently the woman lives in Rye.
They have a home there? Yep. Right near you, I heard. I heard they're your neighbor. And one thing that people don't realize, and this happened, I think, you and I were discussing this when someone, I think, who was involved with the Bruins organization got caught in a similar situation, and he was fired outright. And a lot of people said, why is he being fired, But this is a Title VII violation, which is sexual harassment, because he is the CEO and she is in the chain of command. And so we could see she has not been fired, apparently. And she's on leave, right? Yeah.
And she could easily sue, even though we saw that it was consensual or whatever happened there. But she could easily sue because it is a Title VII violation. It's very interesting.
Now, this astronomer, the company, she was the HR executive. He was the CEO. He's resigned. He's out. I think it was So, I mean, I haven't read it, but to me, I don't know what the story. I don't know why this is catching on. I guess it's because today we live in a social media video. I guess it's, wow, what a moment. And you could see, I think what made it actually, now I'm answering my own question. I think what made it is his reaction once they saw themselves on video, the Jumbotron. He just like tries to escape the world all of a sudden, just sort of, let go. And then it's like falls out of the camera. So they made it worse. But I think it was high-tech AI startup. So I don't know if it was publicly traded or what their rules were, but that's it's interesting. All right, let's talk a little bit about, I don't know if we had you on. I think we did after Dan Innes on my show, his first interview. Yeah, we did. We asked, I guess the question is, are you hearing any murmuring of another Republican getting into that race? We're still waiting to hear is a big name Democrat going to challenge Governor Kelly Ayotte in her expected reelection bid.
Yeah, doesn't seem to be any action on that, at least publicly. I'm sure that the Democrats are trying to find somebody who can counter her, who can talk about some of the legislation she's signed so far, and try to create an opposition party for her. But at this point, there's nothing. And as far as the Innes thing goes, I'm not particularly surprised. It's going to be interesting to see who gets the Trump endorsement in that race and who raises the money. Because these campaigns run on money, and if you can't, we've got 10 months until the filing period, and if you can't even get there because you can't raise the money to keep the light bill on, that's not good, because you've got to get the name ID out. Innes was a state senator for 2 different districts, so he's certainly been on the ballot with a lot of New Hampshire constituents, but that's not enough. So he had a good rollout. Both he and Scott Brown, I think, had pretty good rollouts, and they're on message, going out there, doing what they need to do. And so is Congressman Pappas on the other side, who does not seem to have an opponent. It seems like everybody's running from the 1st congressional district who's a Democrat, but not for the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll see where it all goes, and keep an eye on all the above. And right now, we don't know really, in a state like New Hampshire, this fall, a year from now, where those independent voters, for the most part, because they're going to decide, they're the biggest block, more than Democrat, Republican registered, where they fall or where they're going to lean. I still think it's economy dependent, and I think that's still up in the air. So we'll see where it goes. All right, Neil Levesque, Institute of Politics, St. Anselm College. Make it a beautiful, great Monday. Great weather out there. Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Jack.
I think the economy is everything. In terms of where voters are going to be, I think it's rather striking that all the trade stuff, all the tariff stuff that President Trump and the Trump administration started to, basically levy and take on. And we had a couple of different manufacturers last week on the show, my show here, Good Morning New Hampshire, the Pulse of an Age. One, a steel fabricator, Novel Ironworks over on the Seacoast, and the other one, a pizza manufacturer, Dr. Vic, was on. And, if you talk about tariffs, are they hurting American businesses? And it's interesting, you get a different perspective than you do in the local and national media, news media on this. And, I think the perception, without question, the perception when President Trump, for example, started to take on Canada, back when Justin Trudeau was still in there before Carney, the new prime minister, people are like, why is Canada's our friendly neighbor to the north. Canada's one of our biggest trading partners. Why would you mess with want new trade deals on with Canada? And I'm like, oh my goodness, you just don't know anything about the deal of the economy and what Canada and how their subsidies work and how they've been undercutting everything from steel fabrication and building bids to agriculture, to dairy, to agriculture farms, to paper, to wood, to manufacturing. I mean, come on. Canada's been having an unfair advantage for a couple of decades, according to manufacturers. And they like the fact that things are leveling out because Trump is getting tough with these countries, but other countries have had a better trade deal than us. My point is not debating each country's trade deal with the United States, including Japan, including Brazil, the European Union. The point is, it was just a number of weeks ago that media outlets, and you wonder why ratings are going down on TV news like MSNBC and others, were saying doom and gloom. Trump's going to put us into a whopping deep recession. It's going to be terrible because of the trade stuff. He's causing an incredible, the markets were going up and down. Markets don't like they don't like things being unpredictable. I get that. It was like a ping pong or a yo-yo. Markets up, markets down. Remember, we were saying don't look at your 401k today. They were going up and down, and things have leveled off. And the whole trade stuff hasn't been the bombshell fishing sinker on the line to the economy that some of the people, including Jamie Dimon, big banker, were predicting. So we'll see where it goes, but Doug Tangdon will weigh in on that or with that. We still see incredible unaffordable housing in the region. I mean, I heard going into the weekend in greater Boston, when I say Boston, I'm not talking all of Massachusetts. I'm talking kind of the peripheral circle of Boston proper, the Newtons, the Wellesleys, the Natics, that the median home price in Boston, the median home price, the average is now $1 million, $1 million. And the story is that typically when housing gets so unaffordable, the renting market becomes an alternative. The problem is the rental market is not much lower than if you were to try and buy. In other words, renting is not a great bargain option. And we're seeing that here in the Granite State. We're seeing that in Maine. To rent a place is very expensive. And, some people just can't afford to buy when the median home price gets to be up near $1 million. That's average. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of NH. We are back in just a few.
This is the to Jack on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
I do get a tremendous kick out of perceptions and how perceptions can create a reality in some people's minds more than facts. And the perception is, even last week when the Senate and the House concurred to support the clawback of $9 billion that were funds that were already allocated for foreign aid and public broadcasting as part of and then they also approved a lot of the cuts that the Department of Government Efficiency had made. And, there's this perception that the Trump administration, led by the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, that effort led by Elon Musk for, the first the first 100+ days of the Trump administration, were just like a lawnmower. We're cutting so many federal positions. I've heard everything from people like, can you believe they're just cutting all these people in the federal government? And you hear about the Department of Education, you hear about NOAA, the National Ocean, the Atmospheric Administration. You hear about different agencies, and you hear about the probationary, the federal employees that were including probationary employees and all these things. And you know what? You can't even get a real number. If you go to the Office of Personnel Management, the number of federal workers that have decreased in positions between, let's just say, through the spring, was under 25,000. Different outlets have reported 60,000 jobs through January were cut. Reports indicate that 75,000 federal employees accepted the administration's buyout offers. So even if you round up the numbers, by even double, this is the perception part that makes me get a kick out of this. The perception that Trump and this administration are just cutting so many federal positions without rhyme or reason. And when you look at the total numbers of federal employees that have been cut, it pales in comparison to Bill Clinton when he was president in the 1990s, almost 400,000 positions. 400,000 positions a Democrat president, Bill Clinton, cut to make government more efficient, but people weren't jumping up and down then, were they? Do you remember? I have to point that fact out. A lot of people didn't even know that. In the 1990s, almost 400,000 federal workers were cut in the Clinton administration. And I give Clinton credit because that was the first time they actually dealt with the deficit or cutting the debt and had more of a balanced budget and cutting all those almost 400,000 federal employees, 400,000 federal positions, almost 400, just under 400. Clinton cut. You don't hear that, do you? You didn't know that, probably, did you? Some of you do because you're our audience and our listeners. You're pretty savvy on this stuff, but no, a lot of people don't know that. So hands off our federal employees. Hands off I don't think we had any of those protests back when Bill Clinton was president. Hands off something else maybe, but not federal employees. Well, I don't know. I won't get into some of the scandals. So the whole point is this perception that Trump and Musk or Trump administration are just mowing down so many federal positions. And it's hard to, if you look at just June, here's a story. Here's June 2025, June 6, 2025. NPR. Officially, 59,000 federal jobs are gone under Trump. And there's more to the picture. On his quest to dramatically shrink the federal workforce, President Trump has tried many things. Through his Office of Personnel Management, he invited just about the entire 2 million plus civilian workforce to resign in exchange for pay and benefits through September. His administration tried firing more than 24,000 probationary employees who were typically recent hires, but the courts ordered some of those back. He also tried to set in motion mass layoffs across the government, telling agencies to prioritize downsizing. Okay, so this is an NPR article from June, just last month. On Friday, the Labor Department reported that the federal government has slashed or shed 59,000 jobs since Trump took over. At least 75,000 have taken the Trump administration's offer of a buyout. Okay, so my UVM math would tell me that if you do the 60,000 that they've shed, and I don't know if that includes the 75,000, but even if you are generously in reporting this story up, 75, let's just call it 75 and 60. Do the numbers. So what, 130 some thousand if you do the early buyout and those who you fired. Isn't that, my UVA math would tell me, isn't that far lower than almost $400,000 under Bill Clinton? 400,000 employees under Bill Clinton. Yeah, just over a third. But the perception is what? Trump is just, recklessly cutting down, eliminating federal positions. Hands off our federal employees. Hands off our federal employees. That was a big rally call. Hands off our federal employees. I think some people might still be down at Market Square in Portsmouth. Hands off our federal employees. So a third less than Bill Clinton, and that's being generous. In other words, the numbers pale in comparison to what Bill Clinton did when he was president in the 90s. Almost 400,000 federal employees terminated. So there you go, folks. It's the old perception game, isn't it? It's the old perception game. And I look at some of the other stuff on trade, and I will be candid. If you look at when Donald Trump ran again for president, a lot of the big rallies, he was talking about trade. He was going to right the scales on the imbalance. He's going to make the trade deals, get us even so we can compete, because we've been having bad trade deals with many countries for many, many years, and he's not wrong in that. I really questioned if the short-term pain or up and down and chaos in the economy, the markets could last for any long-term gain. But you can't even get people to agree that making things in America and making more things here is better. So we'll see where it goes. Right now, markets are not caving because of the trade stuff. Markets aren't caving. We've had plenty of up. And Doug Tengden will be on deck, World Market Advisors, talking about that. Some of the other news talk, Harvard University, they want their billions in federal dollars back. Harvard University, despite the endowment, they want their billions in federal dollars back. So they're in court today with Trump administration lawyers. Trump administration saying Harvard fell down. They're not worthy of federal dollars. They shouldn't be getting them because of their anti-Semitism on campus. Harvard University, they want their billions back. Of course, Mike Rowe of Dirtiest Jobs and good friend of the show with bringing back the trades. He says, you know what? Give the money to community colleges for trades. That's what we should do. Let's go. Let's give the money to community colleges for trades that you're not giving to some of these universities over the DEI stuff. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google. Play the Pulse of an H. Looking at a pretty good start to the week on a Monday. Very comfortable. Back in a moment with Doug Tengden.
News, information. Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
We have a beautiful start to our week this week. Welcome to 21 days into July. We're just about 9:50, 9:49. We have a sunny start to the day. Cooler temperatures, more comfortable this week, but just a pop-up shower right now in the capital region as we get going. Doug Tengden, worldmarketadvisors.com on this Monday, one of our great partners and sponsors. Good morning, Mr. Doug.
Good morning, Jack. How was your weekend?
Pretty mellow, pretty nice.
Yeah, it was gorgeous after the after the cold front went through.
Yeah,
but that was kind of rough yesterday. We had some pretty severe thunderstorms come through up here.
Yeah, do you lose power or no?
No, we did not lose power.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm looking. A couple things caught my mind, and I always get a kick out of some people. Warren Buffett's pretty much moving on to retirement, but they still track Berkshire Hathaway. And there was an article over the weekend about how many billions in bank stock that Buffett has sold since he's moved on or transitioning. They made a big deal. What does that mean that he's selling big amounts of bank stock in, some of the big banks, and that people are trying to read into that, wants more cash. And then the other story you hear is, all the trade stuff, all the tariff stuff. Not many weeks ago, Jamie Dimon, MSNBC, about a month and a half, they said, it's going to be doom and gloom. This economy, Trump's going to put us into a severe, deep recession with all the trade stuff, too much chaos and uncertainty. That really hasn't happened yet, and he hasn't gotten all the trade deals he wants. So it's the old 30,000 foot. Doug Tengden, what is going on with this economy?
Well, you can take it to the bank. You can say markets lead earnings, which lead the economy. Markets lead company earnings. That's what they're forecasting. The market is up because earnings are expected to be up. And earnings lead the economy because if companies are growing, their revenues are growing, their earnings are growing, their expenses are under control, what are they going to do? They're going to grow, because that's what, if you don't grow and your partner grows and your competitor grows, then they're going to be able to do things that you can't, and you're out of business. So then they grow. And the market is telling you that things are doing pretty well. Here the market's hanging out at all-time highs. We got the permanent bears saying, "Oh yeah, but it's just a sugar high." No, it's not a sugar high. I mean, revenues are up 5% from a year ago. That's what the current earnings season is showing. Earnings are up about 10% from a year ago. So that's telling me what? It's telling me that the economy is growing. I said it a couple of weeks ago, Jack. I had been looking at some weakness here and there in the labor market, and I said a couple of weeks ago, I was wrong on that. I was wrong predicting a downturn because, people say the market hates uncertainty. Tell me a time when things were certain. The market it's always uncertain out there.
Right.
So I would say, not happy days are here again. There's things to worry about, but the market is telling us that the economy is growing.
Well, it's interesting. I saw earnings for some of the banks that Buffett's, and again, I'm just going off this article. I don't have in front of me how much bank stock he sold, big American bank stock. But how much the earnings were up for these banks that he was selling, and they don't know, they're probably overreading into it, right?
Right. I mean, when Warren Buffett sells something, I mean, you don't know why he's selling. You don't know what's underlying that. You can't figure out why someone's selling. I was selling some bank stocks last week too, because I needed some money. He might have needed the money for a different investment, maybe to pay his taxes, maybe to fund a charitable contribution. I don't know.
Yeah.
You simply don't know. And the people who do know, they are not telling you. But bank earnings were up that were reported last week, up 17% from the year prior. That tells you what you need to know. The banks are earning, and so they're going to be expanding. They're earning because the economy is expanding.
I had to, again, this is Donald Trump, so it's just President Trump. This is how he is. True Social post last week referred to Jerome Powell, head of the Federal Reserve, on the social media post the president put out as a numbskull. I just had to laugh at that because only Trump would say that. But do you think the Federal Reserve, Powell or not, in August is going to are they going to lower these interest rates or not?
Well, we're hearing more about that. Christopher Waller was on the horn last week, and he's on the FOMAC. He's on the Open Market Committee saying, I think the time has come for the Fed to lower rates. We've said this before. The Fed is an institution. They have institutional decision making, and they act slowly because that's the way all institutions act. They act very slowly. I think they should lower interest rates. I think interest rate policy is restrictive, but the economy's not saying that right now. The market's not terribly worried about Fed policy, and there's they're harming Fed independence. Well, the market's not saying that. The 10-year Treasury is right at the same level that Fed funds are at. That's not saying that the market's terribly worried about inflation. In fact, the market's pretty sanguine about inflation. So I'm not terribly worried about it. But yeah, we'll get a new Fed chair. Will President Trump and try to make a big fight over it? Maybe he seems to like fighting over things. I'm not terribly worried about it, and I don't think the market is terribly gonna freak out over it either. There is a little twist out there. Powell's term as Fed chair ends in the spring. That's true, but his term as a Fed governor doesn't end until 2028. He could stay on after stepping down his chair. He could stay on if he wanted to.
I don't think he will, though. I
don't think he will either.
I think Trump is pretty much already forecast when you start calling the Federal Reserve chair is supposed to be independent, but a numbskull. I think he's probably going to be going to teach at Princeton for all I know, or maybe hanging out with Janet Yellen. Who knows?
Yeah, he's not a professor. He was a private equity lawyer. So yeah. I mean, he can go back to making hundreds of millions there.
All right, Doug. Anything else? Real estate.
Well, I just want to. I have to weigh in on this Harvard controversy. As a Dartmouth guy, I mean, I always thought having less Harvard was good for the world. We were never big fans of Harvard, and I don't understand why people aren't why the people in green up here aren't kind of rejoicing at being in the at the red guys being in the crosshairs. I mean, we were never fans of Harvard. We did everything we could to defeat them.
Right. But are you still there?
I'm still here. Yeah.
But is there a point about what is happening with the billions and Harvard is fighting to get it back? The administration's claiming that they didn't handle the anti-Semitism. They still haven't handled it well enough to get the money. But what's your opinion on their case?
My opinion is that Harvard is in a world of hurt. They've kowtowed to the groups for so long they don't know what to do. But they've got great lawyers and they'll fight it out in court. And if the money belongs to Harvard, it'll go back to Harvard. If it needs to be reallocated, it'll get reallocated. I'm personally supportive of President Baylock not weighing in on this and keeping the big green clean from that one.
Big green clean. All right. Thank you, Doug.
All right, Jack. You have a great week.
All right. A reminder, our first hours you can watch on YouTube, The Pulse of an H. Watch on our YouTube channel. You can view. You can download our app, The Pulse of an H. You really should do that on your phone because you can go anywhere in the world. You can go over to Europe and take that trip to Italy and listen to us in the afternoons because that's where we'd be doing our morning show, The Pulse of an H. We got the weather for you on there locally broken down. We got our news broken down by region, Lakes region, Concord, Manchester, Nashua, Seacoast, and of course, national and international, The Pulse of an H. And we have our Pulse Podcast Network right on the app and thepulseofanh.com. Everything with us, we make it easy because I have a theory. We have a hard enough time remembering our pins and our passwords for everything from our debits to our social media. So with us, it's the Pulse of an H. Real easy. It's the Pulse. And I heard Adam spot with Alpine Gold. If you get some gold or silver, buy some and have it shipped to you. Just put the word Pulse in at checkout. Free shipping. The Pulse in at checkout. Free shipping. But the Pulse of an H, our Pulse Podcast Network, on-demand stuff, and a website podcast survey group recently named our Good Morning New Hampshire on-demand content from the show, one of the most downloadable 24/7 podcast, if you will, daily in our region. So that's pretty cool. So a lot of people are going there, as well as our AM and FM News Talk Network. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play The Pulse of NH. Coming up, Anna Brown, Citizens Count. Talk a little bit now that the dust has settled on the budget battle for a new 2-year budget in the Granite State is what are the big issues and what's going to carry into the midterms at a state level into these races. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the pulse of an H. A little bit later on, we'll hear from Mike Dennehy on some of these races in the primary. Rory O'Neill, NBC News Radio national correspondent. Of course, some good news on a Monday. Tom Raffio was out there, and he's our good news energizer reporter. Tom Raffio, President and CEO of Northeast Delta Dental, one of our great partners and sponsors. All right, Jack, Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Nice looking start to the week weather-wise. We are back for the top of the 10 o'clock right here on the Pulse of NH.